The Jacksonville City Council will get a new leader July 1. Westside District Council member Randy White was elected president by a unanimous vote early last week. He takes the helm as the city faces massive spending decisions and a time of limited resources. We're joined now by Randy White. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And you can call or send questions. You can email First Coast Connect at wjct.org. You can reach out on social media, or you can call us on air at 904-549-2937. Randy White, I've seen you're sometimes called the Godfather by your colleagues. I've got to ask a little bit about that. First of all, Godfather Part 1 or Godfather Part 2?
Well, I think hopefully it's a good Godfather. I actually acquired that when I was on JFRD. I was there 32 years and was a former union president. Then Mayor Payton appointed me deputy director, assistant fire chief, and it actually was a Hilda Westbury, which was my assistant, named me that, and it kind of stuck. And
what do you think he meant by it?
Well, I'm not sure. Hopefully it meant that, I try to help everybody, and I've done that my whole life, my whole career. It's important to me when people have issues or problems, try to get them through it. And that name just kind of stuck, and it's been 10 or 15 years, I guess, or 20 that that name. A lot of people use it. I don't never call myself that, but that's what they call me, and it's it kind of raises my wife's eyebrows when she hears it. She said, "Oh my goodness!" And actually, in the installation last year as vice president, it was said, and it embarrasses her a little bit. But if there's such a thing as a good Godfather, hopefully that's the meaning of it.
All right. Well, so you spent 3 decades at the fire department. You worked for Mayor Payton's administration. You've been on council now for how many years?
Went in September 5th, 2018. So I come in a little early. The former District 12 council person had got out early to run for tax collector, actually, and that opened the seat up, and nobody run against me in that 8-month time. And so I went in 10 months early. So I'm in my second term now, second 4-year term, but 2018.
So that's a long time in the world of city employment, city politics. Do you consider yourself a political insider?
I wouldn't say a political insider. Everything's political, from your church to the T-ball with your grandkids. Politics is in everything. So I've been around it a long time. Certainly in the administration at the fire department. Prior to that, as union president, even before union president in 2001, I was involved heavily with the union. So I've been around politics a long time.
So you're going to be leading the council, and part of what the job of council president is to pick the chairs of committees. Who's going to be on your leadership team?
Well, I haven't announced that yet. I'm still working on that.
I was going to try to get you to give us an early peek.
I know you was, and I wouldn't want to speak about that until the people that's going to be in those leadership positions knew it first. So that'll be a couple of days out. I'll get a little bit closer to July 1st because we still have President Salem, which is doing a wonderful job, and he still is the president. So I leave until July 1st. I will keep most of my powder dry, so to speak, on my assignments.
So in just a short while, a little less than an hour, in fact, you've got to head over to City Hall. It's going to be a long discussion today and possibly another discussion tomorrow about the stadium. Yeah,
we've got several meetings on the calendar. It starts today at 10 o'clock. We call it a workshop. So that'll start today at 10, and it's set for tomorrow, and then we'll go as many times as we need to, and hopefully we'll get to a place where we can vote before the end of the month.
For you personally, there's been a lot of one-on-one meetings that the team has been able to do with council members. Of course, council members themselves can't meet, so this will be an opportunity for council members to vet each other's questions. But in your meetings so far with either the administration or team representatives, are your questions answered to your satisfaction?
The questions I had, I've just met one time, and it was just an hour meeting, and I got some of my questions
Who was that with?
That was with Mark Lamping and Mike Weinstein, the head negotiator for the city. I met with them and had a few questions answered, but really waiting. I haven't dove deep. I'm waiting for the workshop so we can hear, or I can hear, the thoughts of the other council members and my thoughts, and that'll start today at 10 o'clock.
Do you have additional questions you want to ask today?
I don't listen. The first day I'll listen and let everybody else talk and have their questions, and then obviously some of their questions will probably answer my questions, but then if there's things left that I'm interested in or not clear on, I will, ask those questions starting today.
Well, we have a question from Mike in Mandarin. Good morning, Mike. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mike.
Yes, hello, Councilmember White. Hey there. I was wondering if you were going to support merging the stadium legislation with the more popular and needed community benefits agreement. They really need to go together. And also if you're going to support really providing all the funding needed for the broken promises of consolidation, sidewalks, lighting, road repair, septic tank removal. There's always money for JAGs and other businesses, but never seems to be money for that infrastructure that's been promised, especially in areas like Northwest Jacksonville.
Thanks, Mike. What do you think about that? We heard last week a poll, Randy, that said that the support for the stadium deal actually increases with that community benefit agreement element, which is additional spending on the surrounding area and other neighborhoods and parks around the city.
Well, that's one of the things I'll have some questions on. There's a lot of things going on in Jacksonville now, a lot of growth, thank goodness, that will support some or most of these things. The city's growing. They say 1,000 people a day moving to Florida, and I think a lot of them is stopping in Jacksonville, which is a good thing. The JAGS is very important, and getting all these things done. Other things that you didn't mention, Mike, was, we got the jail issue. I think probably in the next couple of years will be some of the bigger issues Jacksonville has ever faced, other than back in the late 90s, whenever we did the Better Jacksonville plan, or Mayor Delaney did the Better Jacksonville plan. Now it's time again to look at big ticket items, and obviously there's not enough money to go around and do everything. We've got to try to put things in order of how they should be done. But I'm with you, Mike. There's a lot of things in my district, District 12. That's the largest district land-wise, and that's where a lot of the growth, or most of the growth right now, is happening surrounding Cecil Field. That's what's making the growth out there, and got the equestrian center, fair going to the equestrian center. So I think we're putting about $200 million a year in road repaving and the things you talked about, sidewalk, and really that's not covering but 1 or 2% of what needs to be done. So we've got to find ways to stay within our means, because I will not support a tax increase. We've got to stay within the funds that we have, but it's hard to get everything done, Mike, but I'm with you. We will continue to move forward and do the best we can.
We've got a call from Tom about that subject of the jail. Good morning, Tom. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning to you all, too. I was just wondering if he was willing to consider setting aside the jail in favor of more pressing needs for the city, such as economic development, infrastructure, and resiliency. The jail is going to offer zero return on investment, and there are more pressing needs for Jacksonville right now. Already our roads are in terrible shape, and pushing things into the future that need to be done now really isn't the answer.
Tom, I recognize your voice. I think you've spent a lot of time at City Council with your comments
Yes,
that we listened to, so I know who you are. I agree with you, and what we did, the jail, I don't want to use the term kicking the can down the road, but we did, acquire $9 million to try to get some more life out of the jail. I think that'll buy us 4 or 5 years, so I don't think the jail is anything that will happen overnight, but it's something we got to keep on the forefront, because it's just actually, if you've ever toured the jail, and I'm sure you haven't, or maybe you have, it's past its lifespan, and the capacity that it can hold and the capacity that's there is way more than it should be, and it's just basically, I guess the right term would be, wore out. It's so I don't think that'll happen immediately, but it is certainly one of my top priorities to get the ball rolling on where we are going to go on that, but it'll be a little while in the future.
I'm going to ask you about that in terms of the jail. One of the elements of that discussion is where it would be. And there have been some discussions that the sheriff himself has mentioned, one in your district, in the Cecil Field area. I want to ask you, first of all, if that's something that you've you believe is seriously being considered, and secondly, what you're hearing from constituents about that possibility.
Well, I would not support it being at Cecil. That's a growth area for industry. And I think it needs, me personally, I think it needs to be pretty close to the courthouse, because my understanding they have to move 200 to 300 folks a day to the court system. A lot of that's being done on Zoom now. So at this point, I would not be in favor of that. In fact, 25 or 30 years ago, there was talk about building a prison at Cecil, and that didn't happen. And I would not support that unless I have more information. But at this point, I could not support it being in the Cecil area with the growth of Flight Star, Boeing, and all the things that's going out there. I personally don't think that's the proper place.
We've got a call from Eric in Arlington. Good morning, Eric. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a lot of money that is intended for municipalities that comes from the federal government. Like, for instance, the IRA, which passed a year ago, I guess. There's a lot of money in there for improvements to municipalities that tend to filter down to poor people like myself. So, but we have, like, for instance, a governor who refused a $3.5 billion Medicaid expansion a few years ago, which is again for poor people, for the healthcare poor people. Are we doing as a city everything that we can do to vacuum up all this money that the federal government is making available to us, or are we standing around saying, well, we don't care about the quality of life for poor people, we don't want the money? What is your stand on that? Thank you.
My stand on that, I mean, I know the mayor's office has folks searching grants, and I try to stay in my lane. I think they're doing all they can to bring all the money they can into the city, which I would support. But to be totally honest with you, that is not part of what I think my job is as a district councilman. We have given the resources for the mayor to have funds for grant writers, and I'll let them stay with what they're doing, and hopefully they'll bring as much money as they can to Duval County.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to incoming City Council President Randy White. He is taking your calls and questions, and you can join our conversation at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. And you can also watch our live stream right now. It's on YouTube and Facebook. Money for the jail, the figure being thrown around $1 billion. There is currently no named source for that money. Where do you envision it coming from?
You know, with the growth and all the things we have before us, and I think that's the question that we cannot answer at this point. I honestly don't know. That's why I or my colleagues, we appropriated $9 million to get us some time between now and then to try to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to do all these things that's happening in the city right now. So,
well, what are some of the options? I mean, $1 billion, we couldn't take that out of the general fund, right? I mean, even if it was over a period of years.
Could not.
Okay. And so if it can't come out of the general fund, and you said you don't want to see a tax increase, what are the options besides that?
I think the big option is the growth that we're having in the city, and I can speak to District 12, just the growth there, which would be more tax revenue. There's probably over 10,000 or 15,000 houses that's coming. Of course, it'll take several years for that to build out, 25 years probably for that to build out completely. But our ad valorem taxes are increasing every year from the growth. And with the industry coming in, I believe that's going to lift up our coffers to be able to do most of these things, or get them all done the best we can.
Is there any sense as to what the ad valorem increase could be with the projected growth? Like, is that something that you're able to get the council auditor or somebody to kind of crunch numbers on, so that you would have a sense as to how close to $1 billion that would get us?
That actually comes from the property appraiser's office, and we haven't got the latest numbers. It's getting close to time for them to give us those figures, but we don't have that at this point.
Okay. I want to talk to you about the pension plan, because that's something that is in these conversations. The Better Jacksonville plan tax was eventually going to be redirected to helping bring down the pension debt. It's still enormous for the police and fire pension fund. And the city also, under the Curry administration, moved back from a traditional pension. There's been discussion about trying to undo that or change so that we could have a more traditional pension, help with recruitment and retaining firefighters and police. So what's your thoughts on that?
That's very important to me. We did lose, or the firefighters lost the defined benefits plan back 6 or 7 years ago. And I believe it is creating a recruiting. I believe right now there's a couple hundred vacancies in corrections, probably 100 vacancies in the sheriff's office. The fire department right now is kind of even. Back in the day, they would probably be 3 times the people applied that got hired, and now pretty much everyone that applies for JFRD, if they pass all the background checks and that kind of thing, gets hired. What I would like to see and us investigate, and that'll be a special committee I'll form. We now have a 401k for the new hires, for them to have an option. Our surrounding counties, Nassau, Baker, St. John's, Clay, and throughout most of the state, they are on the FRS, the Florida Retirement System, which is a defined benefit plan. I would like to look and see if we could give the young firefighters and police officers an option whether to go into 401k or to join the Florida Retirement System. And if we can get that done, I think it'll help in our recruitment and retainment.
What is the cost of doing that? What would it cost to put new recruits into FRS?
Well, that's why I will form a special committee. I don't know, and we've got to look at that. And I'll have some subject matter experts looking at that, and have the FRS involved and the city auditors. And that's something that I will do after July 1st, but I do not have that information now.
Is there some reason to think that that would be more sustainable or less expensive than what we were doing at the city level with the pension that, we basically ended for new recruits?
I don't know if it'd be more or less expensive. That's what we got to look at. But we need to retain the people we hire. JFRD, JSO, they hire these people. They have thousands and thousands of dollars in training. And we've seen there's younger firemen and policemen that's moving on to other locations close to us that does have a defined benefit plan. So I think it'll help in retention. And we don't want to train these people and spend all those dollars and they leave us.
So you formerly served as the president of the Jacksonville Association of Firefighters. Do you describe yourself as a union man?
Yes. I went from the union side to the administrative side, but at heart, I'm big on protecting our firefighters and our police officers in any way I can. So yes, I would say that.
What about other unions? I know that the teachers union, for instance, has been getting a lot less support, I would say, at the state level and even at the local level for teachers who are in a union.
Well, I stayed in my lane. I stayed in the public safety sector of the union side, and I know they have their own issues and their own problems. And I've known that union president, the former union president, for many years. I actually went to school with her, so they have the same issues. But I let them deal with their issues, and I deal with the what I know, the public safety side of it.
But do you support the teachers union as in the same way?
Absolutely, yes, I do.
Okay. So the question of what happens to police and fire if they were to move to FRS, would people be in a position to get 2 pensions at that point if they were, in the local system, not as a new recruit, but an existing member, and then switching to FRS?
Well, that's the piece we've got to have the committee. I'm not sure if they would transfer their money over, or they would not get 2 pensions. And in fact, the 401k is not a pension. That would be your money that you take with you when you retire at the end of your career that you do whatever with. So that's not really a pension. That's just a dollar amount that you would have saved over the years that you do the best you can with it after you retire, where the FRS would be a pension. It would be a income that you don't control. The Florida State Retirement System would control that, but that's the difference in the 401k and the defined benefit plan.
Would you say, though, for the people that currently receive, not the new recruits, but the people who are existing on the city's defined benefit pension plan still, would they be eligible for FRS as well, or no?
No, they're retired. Their career is done, so they, have the Jacksonville Fire and Pension Fund that they will continue getting to the day they die. So they would not be involved at all with the FRS.
All right. Got a question from Brad in Jacksonville Beach. Go ahead, Brad.
Councilman, if you could just help me with the timeline of the pension issue. A minute ago, you said that the police and fire lost the defined benefits. But if I understand it correctly, they were voted on by the union. And what we didn't do is any pension reform at the time. We just came up with a pay for the current benefits. The people that were hired just prior to go into the investment plan, they're still due their pensions. And are these lucrative pensions, would you say? I just heard you make the comment that they get it till the day they die. We didn't do any pension reform. Would you be willing to look at that as a way to move forward? Thank you.
Ask that question again. I didn't quite understand your question. Now, we're talking about the last 6 years. All the new hires is now on the 401k. The folks that was there prior that is in the old defined benefits plan, and a lot of those are gone and retired. But I didn't understand your question. Say it again.
Yes, sir. And that's what I was asking. The people that were hired 2 years before we changed the plan, they would be due the defined benefits plan. They're probably coming up on their retirement right now. Am I correct that the average time that a JFRD firefighter enters the drop program is around 23, 24 years?
That's
is that
correct.
Really a career?
That's correct.
So that's 23 years is a pension career for those hired prior to this change. And that wasn't, we didn't do any reform to that, correct? All we did was we agreed to pay them those benefits, and we said we're going to put, and again, not us, the citizens, we only voted for the tax.
Correct.
Both unions voted to move us into this plan.
They did.
And I think there will, yes, sir, and I would think there, if I understand FRS correctly, to move into it, they're going to ask you for a repayment if there's not enough, or I would think the city would have to pay to enter these new firemen into the FRS. Would that be your thoughts too?
Probably so, yes, sir. And that's, like I say, going back to what I said earlier, that's why I want to do the special committee to get all these things hammered out and see how it would work and if it would be possible to do it. There's too many questions now that hasn't been answered, but I believe in the future, if we could get to that and a firefighter, young firefighter, or a police officer had the choice, then that would be their choice. And a lot of people would want to stay with the 401k from what I'm hearing. But you're right, but 23, 24 year, you have to work 20 to retire. And if you did do 20 years, that would be 60% of your salary, and it's 2% a year thereafter, up to 30 years, and then you can drop for 5. But all that, is in the past, and no one else now is on that plan, obviously.
Right.
But we'd just have to see how the FRS would work in conjunction with the 401k.
I'm going to ask you about a different topic. This week at Naval Station Mayport, the Visit Control Center, which is kind of where they issue passes, is under construction because it's non-operational due to flooding. Now, obviously, that's not our purview. That's the Navy. But that facility could lose as much as a third of its land during extreme high tides in the next 50 years. They're going to be seeing 5 to 6 feet of sea level rise. What do you think the city is doing? Is the city doing enough? Is the city allocating enough resources for that eventuality, not just in Mayport, but all along the rivers, all along the coastline of this First Coast?
Well, we have a resilience officer now that is looking at all those things. And to be honest with you, I haven't followed that. So we'll leave it up to that department to tell us what we should do. I'm not so sure, people's on both sides of that coin, if it will be 5 or 6 feet. And I honestly don't know, but obviously we got to deal with that when they do all their reports and try to figure the best way to protect the citizens and protect the city.
What about other impacts of climate change, like heat, which is something that we've been seeing, and storms? We had 500 storms in the month of May in the United States, which is about not quite double what is the usual, 275 tornadoes. We had them in here in Florida. We're obviously seeing our insurance rates respond to the impacts of climate change, which are happening?
That's a subject that I'm not a expert on, so I cannot answer that question. Like I say, I'll leave it to the resilience officer to guide us in the right direction. I do know with our tree ordinance, and I know Mayor Deegan is heavy involved in with planting trees and shade trees. That hopefully that'll get us ahead of the curve a little bit. But I'm not an expert on that, and I try not to opine on things I'm not an expert on.
I just ask you, do you think that maybe you need to do a little more research on it? I mean, it does seem like kind of one of the existential threats of our time.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're doing as a city with a new resilient officer. So we've brought her in a year or so ago, and I'm sure she's working on it daily, and we'll have to see where it goes from there.
She is one person, though.
Well, she has a staff. She has a staff. It's not a one person doing it, and I don't know how many is on her staff, but there's more than one person looking at it.
Yeah, I know as of like 2 years ago, she was the only one. I'm not sure if there's much more than that now.
That's something I'll have to check on.
Right. We've got a call from Hilda, and then we're going to probably have to wrap it up. Hilda on the west side, go ahead.
Hi. Do you have any power of helping your constituents to oppose the school closures, in particular the elementary schools that are located in the neighborhoods? That's number one. Number two, the building, what's going up as far as across from Crystal Springs off of Hammond and what is being built over there off of Ramona? And are they going to be rentals or are they going to be sold to people? Because in my opinion, if you just rent them out, they really don't give up people an opportunity to build wealth. If you sell them, then they can move maybe from a townhome to a house.
Thanks, Hilda. Go ahead.
I believe the numbers, I think it's 84 townhomes right at the corner of Ramona and Cahoon, and they will be single family deeded. They won't be rentals. They'll be, ownership.
How about the schools?
Across from the school is housing.
No, I mean in terms of preventing closures.
We've got the school board, and the city council has very little say on what the school board issues are and what the school board plans to do. So we have no issue, and we have no. The city council has no authority in what the school board does.
Do you have a bully pulpit, though, as president of the council?
We do, and there is obviously, I'm sure, as every district councilman, whatever schools in their district they're concerned with, they will, share their opinions. I've got two in mind that they say one or the other, either Thomas Jefferson or White House, will close because they're building, they got two newer schools right down the street. So I will weigh in on that when I decide what's in my opinion, but that's all it would be as an opinion.
All right. Well, incoming City Council President Randy White, it's nice to talk to you. We hope that you'll come back and visit us during your term.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we're interested to hear what comes out of the Jaguars meeting today.